Hey, I'm Jenna Wolf, certified lactation counselor, parent coach, and extended breastfeeding mom of two. I fully understand the unique challenges of breastfeeding beyond the baby days, and I'm here to take your hand and support you along your journey. So toss that hair in a messy bun, grab a basket of laundry to fold, and let's get started. This is Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. In today's episode, I am joined by my dear friend, Maisie Rattan, who is a heart-centered, holistic sleep coach with a specialization in toddler and child sleep. And she has an international practice where she supports frustrated and overwhelmed parents to responsively and gently support their kids to sleep without yelling or threats or bribes or sleep training. And I adore Maisie. We have really bonded over our shared demographic in our business, that we support similar families, but also that our philosophies are really aligned in the way that we support families. In this conversation, Maisie really highlights the unique challenges that are apparent for families supporting their toddlers and children to sleep, but also the unique opportunities that are there that simply aren't there when you're talking about baby sleep. And I think that this is really what's missing when we kind of take the lens and the view of baby sleep resources and try and extend them into childhood. So it's a really wonderful conversation. Here it is.
First off, Maisie, I would love to hear a little bit more about you and your story and how you got to where you are today as a holistic sleep coach, supporting moms of toddlers. And just a little bit more about your story.
Well, I'm a nurse, or I was a nurse, and did that for many, many years. Kind of a psychiatric nurse. I was like counseling families and with behavioral and mental health things, and then I got pregnant and I had twins, and I mean, people mean right, like they mean okay, but everywhere I go, oh wow, you must be due every day. I'm like, no, I'm only 20 weeks, and like, oh wow, you're never going to sleep. Are you sleeping? Oh wow. I used to want twins until I had one kid. I can't imagine having twins. And, it to be honest, it terrified me. And so I'm a bit of a, lover of learning. And so I, obsessed and read like every, pregnancy and sleep book I could get my hands on when I was pregnant. And you know what, like my twins actually slept okay. Like, I mean, they weren't amazing, but they slept like babies. It was just, there was two of them. And so, together it was hard, but they slept okay. And, I helped a lot of friends with, sleep, my, mommy friends and my baby friends and stuff. And then, somebody said I should be a sleep coach. And I was like, what? No, I got a good job. But are you kidding me? But then, I didn't want to go back to work. And so I was like, yeah, maybe. And so it kind of just happened kind of like as a side hustle at first. And but the more I got into it and the more I realized like, wow, there's this like whole world of sleep training that, parents are doing, and they don't have to be, that there's other ways. And I kind of just fell into the rabbit hole and like taking parenting course after parenting course and sleep course after sleep course. Like, I think I have like 4 certifications right now. and I'm working on another one. And yeah, somehow along the way, I found my passion for working with kids actually, I do work with babies as well, but my specialty is really working with, toddlers and preschoolers. Yeah, it's been a route.
I feel so similarly. Like I feel so many parallels to your story there too in my own. And I love that you're like, I studied and learned so much, and then it was kind of okay. Like I had such a similar experience with breastfeeding where it was like, I read so much, I learned so much, I had so much support. And then it was like, okay, we did it. Like we kind of got through it, and there was challenges.
So bad.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was the support and the education I had that brought me there. And then I could turn around and see friends who didn't have that. And their challenges were so similar to mine, but they were being so much more affected by it. And for me, I know that was kind of the turning point. It was like, oh, okay, like I think I can help people here. Like I think I got something. Like
clicks, doesn't it? Like when you realize, hey, I'm doing okay, because like I understand this. You kind of almost just want to like shout it from the rooftops, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're talking with other parents and like they're, they say something and it's like totally not true. It's totally a myth. Like I just like can't help but like pounce like and like, well, actually, and it's I hope it doesn't come across as condescending sometimes, but like it's like you just want to help, right? It's like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you can see, I think a lot of times too, with the myths or the things that pop up, I think at least for me, there's like a compassionate side of like, oh, like that's like that. I know where that's coming from and I know the pain that's there. And also like knowing where that's going to lead you, like that's not setting you up for success. What I love too about you, Maisie, is that you do focus on like toddler and preschooler sleep, which is amazing. And I think that that's another parallel in kind of our, journeys of working, is that as little support as there is for like holistic sleep, which there is some support out there, but like it is mostly focused on babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like in breastfeeding too, like it's mostly focused on babies. And so there's a real need, I think, for the moms of toddlers and preschoolers, and whether they're breastfeeding or not, relating to sleep. So on that note, perhaps like we could start out with maybe some of the ways that like toddler sleep is a little bit more unique than baby sleep, and yeah, like some of the unique challenges that moms of kids have versus moms of babies.
Yeah. And it's interesting, there really isn't very much support out there that, is really truly gentle and really truly holistic. And it is all focused towards babies, like not to toot my own horn, but like, as far as I know, I haven't come across anybody else doing what I do. I've found a couple of sleep coaches that specialize in kids that, are sleep trainers
Right.
that were quite different than me, but nobody that's doing what I'm doing. And it's really a shame because, it is so different, and I think with babies, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. Like babies wake up and it's so hard, but it's normal for them to wake up. It's kind of when you're pregnant, you may not know, but like it's pretty well known knowledge in the at least the new parents world that you're not going to sleep very well. And I think the big difference is that for babies, so much of it is a need, right? Like they need that connection with us. They need that warmth of our bodies. It helps to regulate their body heat. They need the milk overnight. And while there is, societal pressure that like babies should be able to sleep through the night for 12 hours without a feed at 6 months, it's actually not true. The research shows it's not true. But with toddlers, they can technically go all night without a food, right? They can technically, they're not as reliant on, your physical presence, that they can separate from you during the day. And things start to enter like personalities and saying no. And well, actually, if you say, this, I'm just going to scream and, or I'm just going to get out of bed. And, it becomes a little person. And, it becomes a bit of a battle, essentially. And you kind of, it's hard to recognize in that baby to toddler transition. And then even again, through the preschooler transition, like, what is a need? What is a want? And where do I fit in? Right. Because as when babies, most parents they just give, right? Like they just give. And that's why we don't shower. And that's why we drink cold coffee and all this kind of thing. But at some point you have to find yourself again. And, you have to tip that scale with like your own needs a little bit. Like you can't run on empty forever, especially if you want to have another kid. Right. And so, that's it. You're dealing with, language and development and that the development of a will and a desire to do what they want to do that stubbornness that toddlers get, right? It's fun.
Yeah, I hear you. And there's like similarities and like a thread of like, yes, there's still like attachment needs and there still are needs and there still are those things. And they're not trying to be intentionally difficult, in the same kind of way that we look at like with babies. But at the same time, there's just a whole new world. Like, and I think too, there's a whole new level of resources that are available to you in that kind of toddler to preschooler range that, like, if you're just picking up a book on baby sleep, like you're not even going to think about, right? Because you're talking about language and being able to have certain conversations and different kind of supports because they are able to be separate from you and whatnot. And I totally appreciate all of that. I think that that's a really helpful like reframe to, especially for moms that are in that like 18 months to 2 years, like heading into like in the beginnings of toddlers where you're kind of like, wait a second, what's happening here? Like something's changing. And to have that like that mindset. And I think that that's really helpful too in the kind of attachment parenting world or gentle parenting space. A lot of times, we do sacrifice our own needs so much in the beginning. And you're so right that there comes a time. I mean, I would advocate that, like, even in the beginning, like, there's ways to support yourself and that supporting your own needs is really important. But we do. And I think that that's really common, like surrender and like this too shall pass and like those kinds of things.
For a while.
Yeah, exactly. And not that those things are bad or wrong at all, but sometimes, especially when we really, really want to prioritize our child's well-being, we will become the martyrs. And then we end up being resentful because like at a certain point, we're like, yeah, like something has to change. I can't go on like this forever. So I think it's so helpful to know that there is a difference. Like there is a difference in toddler sleep and you don't have to support your 3-year-old the same way that you were supporting your 3-month-old. There's new options available to you and the game has changed a bit. So kind of on that note too, I would love for you to, this podcast is open to moms of like breastfeeding at any stage. So I remember when my oldest was very young, I didn't even really know what sleep training was or like what that was or what that meant. So I was wondering if, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but maybe you could kind of talk to that a little bit and what makes you unique.
Yeah, what makes me unique? Well, I am a sleep coach, but when people ask me to describe myself, because they usually say, "Oh, you're a sleep trainer," and well, I help people get to sleep, but I'm really more of a parenting coach with a specialization in sleep, and so I work. I'm it's not just about the white noise and the bedtime routine and like a weighted blanket or something, or stopping feeding to sleep or whatever you're told, not doing any sleep associations. There's so much more that I do. And it's, building confidence in the parent to, be able to, recognize what the different behaviors that you're seeing, potentially could mean and what to do about it. And, how to change what you do and what you say, to help form a foundation that your child can become more confident and feel safe and secure to become more independent in sleep, organically and, through natural normal development rather than, pushing them into something and, letting them cry it out. And, so it's really quite different. I don't believe that there are any bad habits. And so, feeding to sleep, for all you mamas feeding to sleep, if that is working for you, don't stop. It's a superpower. I freaking loved feeding to sleep. I remember being in Mexico with twins, and they were, just there. Well, I went twice. We went when they were about 1 and once before they were just before 2. And I remember being down at the beach on like one of those, big cabana beds. And, I've got twins. So unfortunately I'm like practically topless because I'm breastfeeding them. And, they fall asleep and then they're napping and they had like a good hour-long nap on this cabana bed and I'm out at the pool. Whereas like other moms are going back to the, the hotel room to go sleep. And I'm like, yeah, no, feeding is your superpower. It helps calm them. It helps sleep them, continue. But there does become a time where it doesn't always work or right. They're wanting to feed all night long or, it always becomes painful or you're resenting it or, there's so many different things. And, there's this big push to stop feeding. I hear a lot in the sleep world, people contact me. I think I need to stop feeding to sleep. I think I need to stop feeding. I need to night wean. And And, what people don't understand is, that doesn't always help them sleep. Right? Like you might just end up with a child who's not sleeping and you don't have your superpower to get them back down. Right. And so what are you going to do then? Right. And so that's where I come in and help, make sure all your ducks are in a row, and that, you're not just, weaning for the sake of sleep, that we're helping you sleep, get better. Often what I find is if you work on sleep, they'll sleep better through the night, and then you don't need to night wean, and you still have your superpower for when you need it, but they're sleeping better. So you don't even need to night wean. And so that's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, I appreciate so much of that. I think even in my own experience too, I think there's so many reasons why parents believe they need to night wean. Some of it's just because we reached a certain age, so it just has to happen now, right? And other times, it's like, well, things will get better if we night wean. And in my experience, or to leave their child, like I can't leave them with anyone because we haven't night weaned. And to be truthfully honest, my son I want to say just turned 3, but he turned 3 a few months ago at this point, and we haven't officially night weaned. He still will breastfeed occasionally during the night, sometimes very regularly, once or twice a night for like a period of time. But I can leave him with a sitter, with my husband overnight, with my parents, and he will fall asleep. He'll hang out with them. He doesn't have a problem with it. And I think that that's the thing. I say this a lot, that, like breastfeeding isn't the problem. So weaning isn't the solution. And it's like breastfeeding it's one tool of many, right? And so it's normal. It's like a biological norm to breastfeed. So in and of itself, it's not the problem. So just eliminating breastfeeding didn't solve anything, like so many times you can eliminate breastfeeding and the child will still wake up a lot. And you can keep breastfeeding and you can support the child in a way where sleep improves, right? And like where parenting improves and all these things happen too.
Yeah, I see, times where, that's what they've done for a long time, is they fed to sleep and fed back to sleep, fed for naps, and it's worked. And then, the toddler starts getting older, they start getting FOMO and more independent, and it stops working. And then, moms are like, what the hell do I do now? Right? Like, this isn't working. And, they end up breastfeeding for like, they're sitting in the dark room for like an hour trying to get them back to sleep. And then they pop off on the boob and they go, story, and it's like, what? Why do you mean you're not asleep? And so, you end up you get resentful, or toddlers become, the other downfall that I see is that, kids can become so attached to mom that then they refuse to want dad. And like, this is probably the biggest situation that I get in terms of, clients that come my way, is that I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a baby in like 2 weeks or, 6 weeks or whenever they reach out. And it's like, my child refuses to let dad put them to sleep because all they know how to do is breastfeed to sleep. And it's like, what are we going to do? Right. And so it's, I guess my biggest advice is, like, it's a superpower, use it, but it doesn't have to be the only way your child falls asleep. It's totally okay for them to fall asleep different ways with different people. Yeah. Actually different ways, even with you, right? Like you can feed them to sleep overnight because it's quick and you're tired, but maybe, not feed them to sleep for naps or something. Right. And only on certain situations. And, that comes down to like, prepping and practice and boundaries and, like getting them used to things, not just like ripping the Band-Aid off, but yeah, the more help you can get and the more resilience you can create for your child and getting them used to different things, will benefit you down the road for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's like spot on with what I see too. And I would also say too, that a lot of times, this has been my experience, at least, when parents come to me in that kind of position. Now, they don't come to me normally for sleep issues, but they're so similar. It's very like rare that sleep issues aren't also somewhat daytime issues and daytime issues aren't also somewhat sleep issues. Like, and I hear you too. And you're like, I'm a parenting coach that like with a specialty in sleep. And that's how I feel. Like I'm a parenting coach with a specialty in breastfeeding. So I relate to that so much, but there's this fear or this like, fear that the child won't be able to go to someone else. Or, and maybe like it's been, that fear's been founded in a certain sense, but a lot of times like it's our own like discomfort or like our own, like, ooh, that's causing a lot of tension and stress in the situations. And I guess I bring that up to say like, there are like so many possibilities and you're like there, you could breastfeed to sleep sometimes and not other times. You can put them to sleep in different ways. Different caregivers can put them to sleep in different ways. And yeah, there is an element of getting them, supporting the child to get used to that. And at the same time, I always find that if the caregivers are really like confident in themselves and in the situation, and they have that trust within themselves, that the child often follow suit. Like sometimes they have some feelings about it and like there's those things, but when you can be that safe container for your child, like it really honestly for me it comes down to emotional safety and emotional well-being in the adult so often, because when you have that container, when you can create that space, then the child like it's like, yeah, cool. Like I'm happy. That's what they really, really need at the end of the day. And I think that's coming up in my mind because I was just doing like a lesson on consistency and what consistency really means. And I always say that consistency isn't about always having the same yes and the same no. It's much more about always being that safe space for your child. That's what needs to stay consistent, right? Not always having the exact same boundary every single time, Anyways, that was my mini soapbox for a moment, but I so appreciate that. I resonate with that so much in my own work too. So I would love to, first of all, do you have anything else that it's kind of like on your mind to share in this setting about toddler sleep and breastfeeding?
Gosh. I don't know. I mean, I could talk for hours about this, right? Like this is
right.
this is what I do, but I think, the thing that, I think a lot of people struggle with in this, in this space, right? For the most part, I work with people that identify themselves as gentle and attachment parents. And so,
right.
Many of them are breastfeeding, beyond, a year. And, I think that's amazing. And, that's the way it should be. But the downfall or the trap, I think that a lot of us fall into, and myself included, is that when you are a gentle parent and you are a responsive parent and, you do breastfeed longer, is that your child never really cries because you always have such an easy solution for it. And so you don't get that practice of like, your child is crying because they want the blue cup and you gave them the red cup. And, like, how are we going to help them through this? When you solve every single thing with breastfeeding, it can become so challenging to really, make changes with anything. And so you can feel really trapped, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, it's hard because then you just don't have the time and the energy and the effort to practice. And so you can kind of lose your confidence with things, as like you were saying earlier. So I think the big thing is just, not being afraid of that and, practicing other things. We were talking about that earlier, right? Like practicing other things. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say that like toddler breastfeeding and weaning, it's like this like training ground. It can be where you can have the opportunity to safely explore other techniques, other tools, knowing that you still have breastfeeding to fall back on when you need it, right? That like you can like, and I completely hear what you're saying, and I think that many people are in that boat. And I would encourage them that there's this a kind of other way of like giving it a like, okay, like let's support the tears for a little bit. Let's see what that's like. And you have the safety net of knowing that you can come back to breastfeeding. But I think that also comes back to the consistency issue where a lot of people feel like, well, if I don't breastfeed this time, I have to always not breastfeed because I'm somehow moving backwards or, anything like that. And I always come back to that, the idea that your child isn't learning that when they cry, like that, all they need to do is cry and they'll get breastfed. That's not what they're learning. What they're learning is when they cry, they are soothed. When they cry, when they're upset, there's a soothing. And so that could be breastfeeding. That could be a snuggle. That could just be, your presence, your secure presence while they're experiencing a big feeling, right? Like, but I always use that kind of visual of like, it's like a training ground where you can practice and you have the safety net of like breastfeeding. It's like, well, okay, we gave it a try and we always know we can breastfeed. But I always find that so many parents are like, they will push and hold off on breastfeeding while they're practicing these things, because they feel like if they're breastfeeding, they're giving in, or they're like this failure. And this particularly through the weaning process. But I'm always like, no, like, it was good. You sued them. That was good. Right. Like, and to have that opportunity to practice those things and that kind of like safety net of still having that breastfeeding tool, which I call like the all-in-one tool. It's the all-in-one parenting tool. It does all the things. And when the babies are born, that's the only tool you got. That's pretty much like you don't have a ton right in that early stage. Like that's your best one. But then as they grow, then you expand that toolkit, right? And you kind of always have that in your back pocket until you don't. So yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I do think that there is something unique about parents who identify in the gentle parenting space from the beginning, that there are unique challenges that come to the table with that. And sometimes it's like the pendulum can kind of swing, not saying we're too gentle or anything like that. That's not it at all. It's more that, instead of like fully being in your own needs, it's like fully being in your child's needs instead of finding a way to support both of your needs without sacrificing one for the other. Right.
Yeah. The scale gets tipped towards the child all the time, and, it never balances out. And, I would argue to say that, at least the parents that come my way, they do tend to be a little bit on the passive side. And, it's the challenge then becomes when, the scale has been tipped, in your child's way for so long, and you are passive, and it's okay, it's working. But then when it doesn't work, that's when I'm seeing families, snapping and yelling, right, and like
exactly
all these things that they just like, this is not what I wanted to do. Right. But it's like, it's the regulation piece of like taking care of yourself is in all of this. You need to have the capacity to be able to say no and handle the tears. If you're too tired, you're never going to do it. Right. Like there's no way you'll give in every time. And if that's working, that's fine. But it's, yeah.
I hear you. And I think that is like such an important piece though. I talked about this in my workshop I did recently, but, like interoception, right? The ability to like know what's happening inside of your own body. We kind of turn that off as parents in a lot of ways when we're sacrificing our own needs. And, we're conditioned from very young often to do that, to like not identify, even to say like, I don't even realize I have to pee until like my bladder is exploding. Right. But it's also interoception isn't just about being able to feel your organs, but it's also about being able to feel your emotions. And we will often push through our own discomfort in order to provide comfort for our child. But the problem is that your child's well-being is actually directly correlated with the ability that you have to sense and be with your own feelings and your own body sensations. And so it's like we think we're doing the right thing by pushing and stuffing and breathing through it and just, okay, I'm just going to stay here with this. But we're actually pushing down on our own needs, right? And we're creating more discomfort within ourselves. And we forget that, like, we talk about a breastfeeding dyad, these two parts of a whole, but it's an attachment dyad, which is any attached relationship, which means you and your child are one in so many ways, right? You're co-regulating, you're attuning to each other. So if you're not taking care of yourself, like it's gonna wreak havoc. And that's not to make anyone feel guilty or bad. It makes sense. We're people pleasers by nature, many of us. And so we people please our kids. But yeah, it's an important piece, I think. I like to bring it up as often as I can, because I just think we don't think that way. We don't see that very often, and understand that sacrificing your comfort for your child's comfort is going to backfire.
It does. When you're saying this, it made me think of like so many moms who are spending hours trying to get their child to sleep at night, and they're missing out on spending time with their partner, and they're like thinking about the dishes that are still in the sink and the laundry that needs to be changed over, and they're like trapped in the bedroom in the dark breastfeeding, even though their like nipple feels like it's going to fall off because it's been an hour, and like your child can sense that. Right? Like they are sponges, like you said, and it's hard. It's hard, there's no blame here, no shame here. It is what it is, but it just comes again back to the theme I think that we're talking about today is that regulation and that self-care piece, and balancing the scale is so important.
Yeah. And I talk about it as the toddler breastfeeding stress cycle, because we get stressed out and then they get stressed out. And so then they breastfeed more. So then we get stressed out. So then they get stressed out and they breastfeed more. And it like, it just goes down the hill and then spirals out of control until everyone's just super stressed out. And I think like an important piece that when I talk about self-care and when we talk about self-care to remember too, is like, even your own thoughts and what's going on in your own head. A lot of times, and I think that this is really relevant to sleep and to breastfeeding, there's just so many cultural ideas about what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening that I see it sometimes as the issue when you're lying in bed and your toddler's been breastfeeding for an hour and your nipple's about to fall off and you're thinking about the laundry, the dishes. And I've been there. Oh, have I been there? I understand it so well. But the thing that's compounding the stress inside is often that like, oh, like I've created this rod for my own back, so it could be that side of harshness on ourselves, but also it could be like, I'm not peaceful enough. I'm not gentle enough. My child's not attached enough. What do I need to, and like all the things that we need to change, like we're just so focused on that. And just, it truly, I'm a Pure Joy parent coach, certified Pure Joy parent coach. And Leslie, who founded Pure Joy, she talks so much about self-aggression, and we're just self-aggressing at that point. Like we're just beating ourselves up. And here's our sweet little child who fully relies on us for everything. And how does it feel to sense that the caregiver, the one that meets all your needs and is like there for you, is like getting beat up? Like your body, your biochemistry is literally changing. Your physiology is changing. Like they can sense that, like you're gritting your teeth, and now they're breastfeeding more. And what does that trigger? More and more thoughts, more and more stress. Right. So
it's so common. Like, I love that term, self-aggression. I recently, in 2022, I, took upon the task of interviewing families. I interviewed more than 60 families that, with kids between the ages of like 2 and 4, and was asking them, what was the hardest thing about sleep? What's working? What's not? Like, where are you at? Right. And ask them what the hardest part was and like what's going through their head and things like this. And every single one, okay, maybe not every single one, but like almost every single one had this self-aggression going on where, have I done something wrong? Should I have done this? Did I create a bad habit? Should I have just sleep trained? Am I too soft? Am I too this? And like the list of like the guilt, so much guilt and shame, right? Like my other friends' kids sleep just fine. I must be doing something wrong. It's just so profound. And, I want you to know that like, and for anyone listening, you are not alone. Like this, like I'm telling you, like of all 60 people that I interviewed, I would say probably 95% of them said these exact same things. And the ones that didn't, and I said, oh, well, the other mom said this. They're like, oh yeah. So it still applied. They just didn't, volunteer the information.
Yeah, I hear that so much. And that is, like that is where we get into the nuts and bolts in the work I do in a lot of ways is getting into that kind of thoughts. And then the antidote, as far as I see, is self-compassion. It's self-compassion. And then you slowly rebuild, because what you're talking about really, right? It's lack of trust in yourself. It's like, not trusting your intuition, not being with the reality of the situation. And even if even if the past you could have, should have, would have done something different, you're not there now. You're here, And so a lot of times that guilt is just like our inability to just kind of be with reality for what it is right here and now. And when we're kind of stuck in the past in our head, we lose access to our creative thinking and our problem solving and truthfully, the presence and the bond that we want to have with our child and that we're beating ourselves up about in the first place. Kind of ironically, we lose that, right? Because we're so lost in this other space. And that's, I think, when we suffer, we're and it's really internal. We're kind of bringing that on ourselves. But I think that that's really important to note, because so often, I mean, don't you know, Maisie, everyone wants the tips and tricks, right? Everyone wants the tips and tricks.
Tell me what to do.
The tips and tricks. And I'm like, yeah, the tips and tricks are self-compassion and meeting yourself and, like doing this inner work. Like that's...
There's always tips and tricks I can give
of course,
people, right?
Of
Whenever
course.
I ask in those interviews, I ask them, what do you think you need? I just need you to tell me what to do. I just need to know what to do. And, I could give you step-by-step things to do. And I do in my group program, I give you a step-by-step list of things to do, but you're going to doubt it. Oh shit, am I doing this right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't have that. And so, I actually, those interviews completely transformed the way I work. I mean, I did this stuff before, but like, I now know like my group program has a whole module on like mama care and another whole module on mindset. And, these are the pieces that, make the program successful, right? Because like I hear from people all the time, it is like, oh yeah, I purchased this guide or I purchased this book and oh, I've heard this before. And, this is all review. I know what to do. And why isn't it working? And, this is the piece that's missing.
Yeah. 100%. I don't even get into like for my course, there's certain bonuses that I have that are more how to, and I don't release them until partway through. Cause I was like, okay, we got to work on some other stuff first, because if I give that to you right now, it's not going to work, because you're going to be using it really as a method to control the external so that you feel more comfortable inside. But you need to turn your eyes in on yourself first before we can look at the external. We really have to start with the internal, So I love that. I would love to sit and talk all day, but we should probably wrap up. So Maisie, I would love for you to just share where people can find you and what you've got going on. Cause yeah, I think you're amazing and I want people to connect with you.
By all means, yes. I'm probably most active on Instagram, so you can find me there at Maisie.Rattan. And I have a Facebook group as well, Gentle and Responsive Mamas Seeking Sleep Insanity, where in both places, I do like little Q&As and stuff like that. And you can find a community of other moms that are very similar, in a similar boat to you. I work, individually doing coaching. And then also I have my group program, Hello Bedtime, which is, the only, gentle parenting program for toddlers and kids, all, specified for them, right? Sleep and mindset and all the things we've been talking about in there. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I can't even describe it, because I just stumble up every time, the transformations that moms get. It's just amazing. But I think, the thing is that, what I've also brought into my programs is, like lifetime ongoing support, because that's the thing, is that when we are struggling with the confidence and we don't know what to do, it's often, a quick fix. And so I'm quite happy to, continue to support people. And so with my program, once you're in and, we get you sleeping, if something happens, your child gets nightmares or, who knows what can happen, because sleep's always up and down, right? You still got me in your back pocket. And, that's my commitment to, helping moms in this space, because it's a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that so much. And I think that does go back to what we were talking about before. And, when you are sacrificing your needs so much, you kind of turn around and 2 years have gone or 3 years have gone and you're like, well, do I have friends? Do I know people? Do I talk to other adults? Like,
see this. I get like a DM from somebody. I'm like, oh, when's Hell Bedtime running next, or whatever. And I'm like, oh man, I scroll up. I talked to you 6 months ago, and I talked to you like 9 months before that. I'm like, oh, honey.
Yeah, I totally hear you. That is amazing. It has been wonderful to have you on, Maisie. And yeah, everyone go check out Maisie on Instagram. I still learned so much from all of her incredible posts, and definitely check out her course.
If you loved this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. Also, check out my breastfeeding toddler communication guide and cheat sheet to learn how to say no to the feed while still saying yes to the need at www.ownyourparentingstory.com/guide. And that concludes another episode of Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. The theme song is Little Balloon by Jenny and Tyler, and it has been a pleasure to share this time with you. I'll catch you in the next episode.